Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mind, Body, and Roots. Today I have my amazing friend Yusuf Anwar, my German knife bro, someone that's helped me through dental school, and just a brother. And honestly, I'm so excited to have him on here, talk about his journey into practice ownership and so much more. So Yusuf, without further ado, please go introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot, Ahad. Appreciate you for having me on the podcast. Yeah, like you mentioned, your brother. Want to mention that first. Not only a friend, but a brother. And yeah, my name is Yosef Anwar. Went to UC Berkeley, class of 2016. NYU, class of 2021. And now, thank God, I'm a practice owner for 3 offices, actually partnered in a couple. Elite Dental, Mountain Bay Dental out in the Bay Area. And then just had a recent startup for pediatrics and orthodontics out in Antioch, California. I got married a couple years ago. Love my wife. Shout out Mosa. And yeah, let's get the ball rolling.
Awesome. So Yusuf, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about your journey into dentistry. So you said you started out at UC Berkeley, which is, by the way, a phenomenal school on the West Coast. For those that don't know, where did it start, and like how did your interest in dentistry begin?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You'd be shocked. I still get that question, maybe because I'm a younger dentist, still in the early 30s, but I get that quite a bit. Still have a few people shadowing. So I really wanted to be a doctor. The hardest decision in my life was actually debating between an MD and a DDS. It was a really tough decision. Ironically, I went into Berkeley wanting to be a dentist, and towards the end, I wanted to be a dentist, but for the majority of the actual UC Berkeley timeline, I was really looking into taking the MCAT. I was signed up for it. I wanted to do MD, and I wanted to be a radiologist, actually. I had one of my uncles really pushing for radiology. I thought it was a great program. Now, thankfully, thanks to AI, I'm actually glad I went to a field where we're kind of irreplaceable. Good luck trying to do cleaning with robots for anyone or Invisalign or something. But yeah, it was a really tough decision. I remember I shadowed like 100 hours at San Francisco General Hospital, the radiology department. I'm from Fremont, California. Spent majority of my life there, other half New York, and I did like 100 hours in the emergency department. I really liked that career, but I think the big difference, and I'm really hoping this doesn't change for dentistry, is the fact that as dentists, we're fortunate enough where everyone says they don't want to see the dentist, but do you really want to go to see a radiologist or an ER doctor? Like that means everything's up like the lowest of the low. I love the fact that we can see our patients back and forth for regular cleanings and checkups or Invisalign or whatever it may be. And then on top of that, as you guys could tell, I love being a business owner. I love being my own boss. I know I'm in a partnership, but thankfully, like essentially I'm my own boss in that as well. And I think that's something that dentistry can offer that other fields really can't. And fortunately, really hope corporate doesn't really take that aspect away from us, but I'm enjoying every bit of it. I know there's a lot of ups and downs, but that's played a pivotal role. Just the fact that there's a good work-life balance. We'll get into that terminology a little bit later. And yeah, it's nice to go to like a wedding or something. Everyone's like, hey, that's my tennis. I didn't Invisalign with him, and so on and so forth. You'd be shocked. You'd get like a few patients here and there like that. Uh, I got a couple patients last night for my Antioch location that I just tried to move my car, and the person was like, hey, I think you're familiar. I was like, yeah, I'm going to a dental office down the road from you. You want to come visit? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to bring my kids. So got a few patients like that. It's not the same at a hospital, right, as an MD, unless you're like a plastic surgeon or something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. It's just two different worlds, and there are a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. I think we're like medicine, but maybe 20, 30 years ago when, private practice was a thing, when you did have to market yourself, when you could open up a business and be the only solo doc or a couple of docs, like providing a service. Now, with the private equities and other firms purchasing, hospitals and hospital systems, it's just changed, and I don't regret it. Looking at the whole business aspect, I think we're one of the few healthcare fields that still has that autonomy to do that type of practice. And I think there's a beauty in that. And so, okay, talking about Berkeley, what was that like? What was the environment like? What was your major? Who were your friends? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Berkeley is a wonderful school. Like you mentioned, ironically, I always wanted to go to Stanford, but I guess Berkeley's a really good second option, right? I lived right next to Stanford. The biggest difference between wanting to go to Stanford and Berkeley If anyone knows, average grade at Berkeley is a C minus, average grade at Stanford is an A minus, and you really felt that your entire time there. So I have a lot of successful friends, a lot in the tech industry, doing great things out there. A few friends that are general surgeon in Beverly Hills, ER doctor at Stanford, oral surgeon at UCLA, like some big name guys. And these are like some of my closest friends. And I'm very fortunate to have made those really nice close friends. We're all very close. They're actually a lot of them are patients. And now they bring their wives over as well. So we're all close knit, but Berkeley was not easy. It almost felt like they had to bring you down
Yeah.
time and time again just to make you stronger. And I
Hmm.
feel like that has played a role in my life right now. Just bringing that, tying that into being a business owner. It's not easy. I know I was mentioning a few things with you, like HR is not easy, hiring is not easy, firing is not easy, getting patients the door is not easy. But I feel like the fact that you just have to always like, I remember, I'll never forget. There were times I'll just stare at the sky. You could actually see Alcatraz and Golden Gate Bridge from the hills of Berkeley. And I was like, oh my God, this place is so hard. I'm like used to being the smartest kid at school. And all of a sudden, I just took a physics exam that I just studied for 2 weeks, and I don't even know what I got. I'm scared I'm gonna get like a 40 or 50. And then of course I do get a 40 or 50%, which is terrible, but they curve it. But it's you like feel so bad for those 2 weeks until you finally get your score. Like, oh, this if I got an A minus, yeah, you did get an A minus, but 2 weeks of just stress thinking about it, like, how does a 48 turn into an A minus? I don't know. A lot of those types of situations, but I remember like the connections were amazing. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of NFL players, NBA players like Jalen Brown. I used to walk by him every single day for a year. It's crazy. I never once thought about taking a picture with Jalen Brown. Like I just like, hey, what's up, Jalen? Jared Goff is my Facebook friend. Jared Goff, number one overall pick in the NFL, all that. You know what the funny thing is? I've had Jared Goff take a picture of my friends and I, not a picture with Jared Goff. Like it's just the funniest
Wow.
situation. I met Steve Kerr from the Golden State Warriors before right when he became a coach. Had a really nice conversation with him. I met Klay Thompson. Like ironically, I never met anyone famous outside of Berkeley. Not before Berkeley, and not after Berkeley. I know at NYU, my roommate ran into J. Cole and a few other famous people, but I never was fortunate enough. That was mostly Berkeley for me. A lot of, like the list goes on and on. Marshawn Lynch, Deshaun Jackson. I'm a big sports guy, so I was always like that made my day every time I got to meet some of those people. Really nice. No pictures to show, unfortunately. So yeah, overall, loved my experience at Berkeley. Really grateful for it. Really nice community. Trust me, I have the alumni UC Berkeley at the back of my car instead of anything else because it was tough to go through Berkeley.
Very cool, man. Dude, that's insane that you met so many famous people and like you met them before they were famous for a lot of them. But like, imagine if you had the pictures, you could sell that stuff for quite a lot.
About autograph
Because there's
jerseys
definitely
and
people out there
stuff.
that would pay for that.
Yeah, well, I could have honestly
Hmm.
autographed like their Cal jerseys to could have made some good money out there, but it's all right. It's the memories will last forever.
Absolutely. Okay. So Berkeley was a resounding success for you. You had a great time, met a lot of people, intermingled with some superstars in the making. Now, NYU, how is that like, going from Berkeley, which is like kind of more West Coast, relaxed, chill vibe, to the city that never sleeps? New York is, well, we both know what New York's like, but it's just go, go, go. So how was that experience for you? Why did you decide to go NYU? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So if anyone here listening who wants to apply to medical or dental school, let me just tell you one thing. It is not easy, not easy one bit. And that was one of the hardest things to do. It's like in my head, I'm like, what was harder, going through NYU or getting accepted into dental school? Because I've actually tried two different cycles. The first cycle, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna get in. Let me just apply to the California schools. I'll get into one of them. It's only like back then there's only like 3, 4 options for me. I applied, didn't get in. I was like shocked. I was like, what just happened? And then second round, I was like, let's apply everywhere. And a lot of great options. Obviously applied to some of the more expensive schools like NYU. But oh man, that was a great life-changing experience just being at New York City in Manhattan, Empire State Building right there. So much to do, so many great people. That's where we met. Uh, I'll never forget our Times Square story on New Year's New Year's Eve. I was telling a lot of my patients about that a few weeks ago. But if you remember, I became a little bit popular on Instagram then. So I was a very shy, like quiet, reserved type of guy. Like I can't say enough about how quiet of a person I was. Like there are people that I met after UC Berkeley in New York City, and they're like, you didn't even say hi to us once. And then all of a sudden, you see like you're the president of the Muslim Dental Association. You're on Instagram. You have a lot of followers. You have these sponsorships. So I guess the big thing I did over there was, you know what? I'm just gonna come out of my shell. Let's just be a completely different person. I'm just tired of just being a quiet guy on the sidelines, and let me just be myself. So that's what New York City enabled me to do. And what a fun city to be in for 4 years of education. Yeah, it's a little bit expensive, but those memories, once again, will last forever. Like just biking around New York City between exams. If you remember, I had to convince you and one of my other friends, Parth, to come to the Daily Show because I got free tickets, and no one was willing to go with us because we had
I remember this.
pharmacology exam the next day. Parth is the same year as me. You had an exam 2 days later. I don't know how you guys made it, but got to meet not only Trevor Noah, but a special guest was Oprah, which
Yeah.
was an amazing surprise. Like just think about that. I guess I did meet someone famous, right? From far away, we got a nice little souvenir from Oprah. Well, it's not a car, but just a book. I still keep it with me.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it was NYU was also not very easy. I know they break it into different cohorts, and as you know, I had the hard scat. And that's funny. He battle tested me a
Hmm.
lot. We actually had a really nice email exchange after graduation. I had a dream about him. I was like, you know what? No ill feelings. Let me just message him like, hey, uh, Dr. G, thanks a lot for all your help. Now that I'm in a partnership and all that, I see like why you were so tough on me out of everyone. And I feel like nowadays it helps me out a lot because now I'm keeping a lot of other people accountable. Like I'm in
Hmm.
charge of like 20 plus other people. And if anyone's a business owner, it's not easy dealing with like HR related issues. And I remember he emailed me back. He's like, you know what? I was always really tough on you because I felt like you had the most potential out of anyone over there. And I'm not shocked at your success one bit, especially this early on in your career. So I graduated 2021. This email was sent around Christmas time of 22 when I finally became the first two partnerships. And I remember I was like, dang, that's big. I actually sent it to a few other people in that cohort. Like, I remember one of my good friends, Jeff, was like, "Dude, you're a good man. I don't know if I would even be able to email him after what you went through." I was like, "Hey, it's all right. Sometimes you have to go through those trials, and I think that's gonna be the big thing I'm trying to emphasize to everyone. Like, we're all gonna go through our tough times, but that's kind of what makes us later on down the road." And the last thing I want to mention about NYU is the COVID class, right? Was it third year? We really didn't have many patients. COVID broke out. We were off for 6 months. We did Zoom dentistry. You don't learn how to do fillings on Zoom. uh, so I graduated with like almost no requirements. I mean, like they just made it so easy to graduate. I only did one root canal, like 10 or 12 fillings, something like so small. I did two crowns in the third year, and then I remember they held my hand pretty much for those. I did one denture, no partial denture. Like like I graduated with almost no credits. Yeah, I did a few cleanings, but anyone can do a cleaning, right? Uh James.
Hmm.
So yeah, we could talk about that more. I did a lot of CE courses. I spent over $100,000 on CE courses after graduation. I think you're kind of familiar with that. But hey, it was necessary, it was needed. I
Yeah.
got my degree, grateful for everything NYU did. And here we are.
Yeah. Dude, honestly, NYU was just such a what's the right word for it? uh Ephemeral, I think it is word. It was such a great experience, man. That like met some amazing people. I had you as a mentor, as a friend. I mean, you got me out of my shell, dude. I mean, I was a shy little sucker, to be honest. I didn't want to leave, and like you were like, no, you gotta do this, do this, do this, and it was just like it was your energy that rubbed off on me, gave me extra confidence, and like, man, I still remember the day that we had our Afghan dinner and went to Times Square on New Year's Day, and we're like, "Yo, that's so cool!" And we just watched it from a mile away, and it was a cool experience. And it started raining, and I was like, "Well, that's just our luck." We had a good time. And then, dude, I don't know if you remember this. for our 1 day trip to Boston during Ramadan. That was the most craziest thing. 2 a.m. and then 2 a.m. that next day back. Man, we had some good memories. We also did like the Edge when it opened up and restaurants and dude, I every little memory of New York in your 20s, like I think it's the best time to spend it there. I live with no regrets. It was expensive, but by far the most eye-opening experience. And if you get the chance to do that ever in your life, man, it's I completely agree. And when it comes down to tough, group practice leaders and people that are not easy on you, I think it makes you want to be better and it breaks you down a bit, but that breaking down allows you to rise, and that rise allows you to see what you are and who you are meant to become. So I think although it was difficult, it always allows you to be better. And yeah, the COVID class was just a absolute mess, but I mean, I was still partly in that, row of COVID, but they were more relaxed with us. So I definitely did a little bit more, but there was something I learned from you, and that was to continue my education. I think we even did like what business masters and stuff in COVID. Like we spent like a good 5-6 grand on courses as students, dude, and then outside we're like spending close to like 60 to 100K, of our salary on just education. And I think people forget the importance of investing yourself. So, dude, you touched on some phenomenal points, and yeah, that's pretty much the nutshell of how you want to be a better dentist and a better clinician. So now my question to you to continue this is you're a partner in two practices and you opened up your own pediatrics/orthodontics startup. Let's talk about that. Like, how did you start with the partnerships and what was the mindset change that you're like, I kind of want to try this new startup? Like, where did that idea come from and how's it going now?
Yeah, yeah. So we got to go back to NYU days. If you remember, anytime I had free time while I was drilling teeth or something, I had my AirPods in, listening to like Mark Costas. If you remember, we actually talked to Mark Costas and Dr. Paul
Yeah,
Goodman. It was amazing.
we did.
I was thinking about that a couple
Huh?
days ago. So I was always on podcasts, listening to anything I could listen to about practice ownership. Like I was a hungry late D1, early D2. Like that's when it started. Taking courses. Remember, we're in dental school, taking courses with like professional people like Dr. Scott Luna, learning about business masters and
Hmm.
startups and all this. Like we wanted to start early, and I feel like that played a big role because when you start early, like you get busy when you become a dentist, right? Even if you're in residency, it's a lot of work, residency and all that. So I'm really happy that we started early, and just I guess the hunger really played a role into that because I was actually talking to a consulting firm about startups like as a D4. They're like, do we even entertain this guy? And they saw I was like really ambitious and wanted to do it. So that was always my plan was I tried to buy like as a D3, crazy, but I wanted to buy an office essentially between D3 and D4 so I could just walk into that situation right after I graduate. It didn't work out that way, maybe for the greater good, because I sent some flyers out to like far away cities, nowhere near the San Francisco Bay Area, like over 100 miles away. And I really only got like feedback from like a couple people. They were brokers trying to sell me a few bad offices, like $1 million for an office with 3 operatories, hasn't been remodeled since 1982. They have like pretty much no patient base. I'm like, you're gonna go bankrupt if you do this deal. So early on, I noticed right away we got to jump into startups. So and I want to do a startup like 2021, 22. I started this process, and then it just wouldn't work out no matter what I did. And I was actually working with the consulting firm. I gave like my deposit down, like $20,000, all that money, and it just didn't work out. So then I'll never forget. I was coming back from one of my friend's wedding. I got a call from the bank like, "Hey, we can't do this anymore. We're in bad economic times." And it was like in 2022. I was like, "No way!" Early 22. I was like, "This is like just devastating." Uh, I remember that hurt a lot. So then I'm like, what do I do? And it's crazy how the world works. 2 days later, I'm back at work at a completely different office, and my business partner owns a lot of offices. I'm at his main headquarters, and the VP of the company offers me like, hey, why don't you try to be a partnership in Pleasanton, California? Isn't that what you want to do? I know you're getting engaged soon and all that. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I never really thought of it that way. He's like, yeah, we have 2 offices in the Bay Area. Why don't you think about it? I was like, it's funny. I remember I was so like heartbroken over the fact that I spent like 4 years essentially planning this out. Acquisition didn't work, startup didn't work. And then I remember I did my due diligence for these offices, 3 months back and forth. Dr. Chima was my business partner, great guy. We had so many meetings together. He was like very upfront, showed me all the information. He's like, look, you've done a lot of good work for all these other offices. Let me put you back into the Bay Area. You're closer to home,
Mm.
family, all that. And just run it how you want to run it. I'm here for all support, anything that you need. We have like really good relationships with like Henry Schein, Invisalign, Neodent, Strawman, all these different companies. And that's going to benefit you a lot. And then same with marketing as well. I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. I eventually jumped in Los Gatos, California, really close to Silicon Valley. I'm like next door to Netflix headquarters, Pleasanton, California, huge office, 4,000 square feet, 13 operatories plumbed, like 8 chairs in there. I was like, damn, we have so much potential. We just don't have the patience, but we have a lot of potential. And yeah, it's been a work in progress, like a lot of sweat equity. Uh, I was throwing away old dental chairs, remodeling, redecorating. You actually visited uh that one office,
Mm-hmm.
that one of the offices that we pretty much rebranded and redecorated. Like everything was like
You did.
redone. And yeah, a lot of hard work, but thankfully today, like it's gone so far compared to where we started. Same with the other office, maybe not as much because I'm closer to Pleasanton office. But yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a great, nice, fun learning experience. And yeah, that's kind of how the partnerships came to be. And I'll be honest, I had no intention to do this startup. They kept pushing me. It's like, hey, you gave a deposit and all that. Let's try it out. We can dive deep into that. Wanted to hear if you have any questions about the partnership because it's kind of like how it is nowadays in dentistry. A lot more
Mm-hmm.
partnerships, a lot more startups. That's probably number two. Acquisitions don't exist as much because unfortunately, most dentists are willing to sell to DSOs only. I feel like the only offices left out are the ones that no one would really want to buy. So, two partnerships, and yeah, we'll dive into acquisitions if you have any questions.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. Like, let's go for it. Like, let's talk about a little bit acquisitions and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, acquisitions are a lot easier than startups. Startups, it takes about a year and a half to 2 years to get things ramped up and going and just open your doors essentially. Acquisition, essentially, you walk in, buy the office. Sometimes you can even get a shell of an office for really cheap and just maybe put some new equipment and get started. So, because I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of saturation. I know a lot of people probably feel the same way in Los Angeles, New York City, a lot of these big cities. So I had a completely different mindset for this startup because I really didn't want to keep doing everything. I was like, you know what? I really like orthodontics. We could talk more about that. I do a
Mm.
lot of Invisalign. We're top 1% Blue Diamond Invisalign providers. So Invisalign's my bread and butter. I do orthodontics. I do braces as well. I do a good amount of those. And I was like, I really like orthodontics. And what if we tied to something like pediatrics, which is in an area of need? We could talk about how fun it's been to do that startup. So much crime I've had to dealt with that startup. But I was like, you know what? I really like helping the kids. I love doing like braces and Invisalign for the teenagers and the younger kids. But like, what if we just combine that while we're kind of like far away from all the other offices? Because I didn't want to really be involved in a conflict of interest. And at
Mm-hmm.
first, I really wanted a friend that's pediatric focused to help me out. Unfortunately, didn't work out that way. I thought we had a couple things lined up, but hey, everything's meant to be, right? As we learned from Berkeley and NYU experiences. And yeah, really grateful for Canopy Kids. So many things have gone wrong. We could talk about those. That could be in its own podcast, honestly. But finally got doors opened up. We're ramping it up. We're actually taking state Medicaid. This is a lot different because the other ones are more PPO, fee for service, higher end dentistry like implants, all on fours, Invisalign, obviously your bread and butter fillings and crowns and all that, root canals. But this one's more so now just pediatrics up to 21, which is almost an adult, and then orthodontics as well up to 21.
So, you know, let's dive into some of those areas that, run into like the crime and the issues. Because I think like people glamorize open up practice or acquisitions or starting up, but no one really talks about the issues. So, go ahead. Let's dive deep into that. Go for it. Like, what was your experiences like?
Yeah.
Even if they're hilarious, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So if let's go back. I wanted to do a startup in the beginning. I had a great I did I had a great team, but I guess the one weak link was my real estate agent. Before she was let go after things didn't work out with us, because that's when you try for 8, 9 months, and a real estate agent's always like very like a B type of person, like, hey, I don't think it's a good idea. Let's do this, let's do that. Like he wasn't really pushing for it. Round two, I had a really good real estate agent, I had everything working out, but the landlord was really tough to work with. And then once we got the landlord, we had so much crime. I had 5 break-ins. I'm just gonna summarize it real fast. We had 5 break-ins.
Yes.
Labor Day, they burned my office. We had a porta potty for the workers because we don't have a working bathroom, and they burned the porta potty, which ran into my building. So we had that. I wanted to install overhead TVs for the kids because it's a nice distractor. So I've done a lot of shadowing around the country. Texas with our good friend Mahmoud out there. I got and a few other friends like Ahmed on the Wavy out in Dallas, and they're like, you know what, overhead TVs, great idea. Let's add overhead TVs.
Yeah.
Fire sprinkler guy unfortunately forgets to turn off the water, so the office is flooded before we're even open. So I've had a flood, I've had a fire, I've had 5 break-ins. Christmas Day, we had a homeless guy pretty much break my windows. Can you believe it? 2 days in a row,
Ah,
the
God.
windows got shattered, like my front door windows, and when boarded up. It's just not a good look for brand new startup office for kids, mind you. And I remember once I was installing the Canopy Kids sign, I had a guy show up in front of me. He's like, "Hey, um, don't let this guy wash your windows." I'm like, "What do you mean? No one's washing my windows. My windows are dirty." He's like, "No, tell the subway guy, it's your people. Tell him to not hire that guy." And then subway guy comes in, the owner. He's like, "Hey, brother, what's going on?" I'm like, "This guy tell you not to wash his windows." I don't speak. He speaks like a dialect in India that I forgot exactly. It's a very unique language. I'm just telling him in English, and then he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, that guy, the main guy, telling me." He's like, "That guy, the child molester, the guy washing the windows." He's like, "I saw this guy doing something in the bush in front of your office. I chased him away multiple times." Like, it's the area where I'm at. I was trying to hand out flyers once, and I'm like dodging people drugged up on the streets. I'm like at Walmart and other places, like near Walmart, near like community centers. It's Medicaid, right? I want to
God.
pass out my flyers so we can get
Yeah.
the kids to come there. It's an area of like major need. It's you're in a different. You feel like you're in a different country. It's so funny. But hey,
Oh
we're making
God.
it work. I have bulletproof windows, I have 14 cameras, I have every security system you could ask for, private security in front. I'm as like equipped as a bank at this point.
Literally, man, that's insane. But hey, all the power to you. That sounds like a phenomenal way to like dodge and like weave past all those problems. But like you said, like it's just a different environment. The people are socioeconomically challenged a little bit, but you're still doing an amazing service by serving them. So it's all about perspective, and it's always going to come with a lot of hardships. And as you said, it takes about a year or two. So it's going to probably, if I were to guess, at least 2 years, and you'll be just running and gunning once you have that all going up and started. So hey man, that's a phenomenal journey. And you mentioned ortho, so it's like let's just touch on that a little bit. Like, did you take specific courses? Because obviously in dental school they just kind of touch on orthodontics, but they don't actually teach. They kind of gatekeep it. So what did you do to learn orthodontics?
Yeah, yeah. It was actually unfortunate. I found out from a recent graduate that they don't actually allow them to be Invisalign certified anymore at NYU. I think that might be a growing trend everywhere. Yeah, and see, it's a shocker to you too. Uh, I've actually helped quite a few people get into dental school, maybe not as many as you. So yeah, one of them reached out. She lives in the San Jose area. She's like, "Yeah, I'm not Invisalign certified." I'm like, "No way, that's mind blowing." But even though we were Invisalign certified, you don't learn much about orthodontics. So when I was at NYU, if you also remember any other free time I spent, I was shadowing perio over 100 something hours, ortho over 100 something hours, endo over 100 something hours, oral surgery maybe not as much, like 50 hours. So a lot of hours. And then I remember I loved Invisalign, and if I really love looking into cosmetic dentistry, all that, like Dr. Alpha, like without a big presence out at NYU. So ironically, the president of the AACD, I got to know him. I got to shout him a few times. He's a great guy, and he actually does brackets. And I was like, "No way, what course did you take?" He's like, "I took progressive ortho seminars, so I highly recommend them. I get nothing out of it." You guys have fun. They're actually worldwide. So you can take classes in Singapore, Italy, and if you pay for the fee once, like right now,
Sure.
if I want to go take a C course in Italy, I could go do that, right? Wink, wink, tax write off. So you could do a lot of different things with progressive ortho seminars. One time fee, entire world. Invisalign, I already walked into a situation where we're pretty highly ranked Invisalign certified, and like we were somewhere in the diamonds, right? And I was really fortunate enough to help increase and help our organization go to blue top 1% blue diamond. I know there's a lot of doctors that help us out with that, but I'm gonna humble brag, do the most amount for us with these two offices. So just the fact that I kind of had that avenue where I was like, hey, you might not, sometimes it's not about the money, right? I used to do Invisalign for fun for these places. There was no incentive for me. There's nothing, but I was looking at it as like a C course. I got to go to a lot of C courses for free courses. Just the fact that Dr. Chuma's name was tied into it. And I'd honestly just fix cases and do it for fun. I was like, you know what? Let me do these refinements. I want this patient to be done. I get nothing out of it. It's my free time. It's my lunch time. It's my like free time at home instead of watching TV or something. I'll just fix people's cases. And I feel like that really played a role because now that I do so much Invisalign, I can just look at a case. I'm like, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. A, B, C, D. And yeah, I love ortho. Like everyone keeps asking me, like, why did you do ortho residency? But I love doing other aspects like the surgical aspect, the wisdom teeth removal, there's sedation, there's helping the kids out, pedo. So yeah, just really fortunate enough to tie all that together. So progressive ortho seminars. Invisalign has a lot of courses, but it's kind of like root canals. You just got to start doing cases and hopefully have someone there to kind of help you out if things don't work out. And I was fortunate enough to have that situation.
Amazing. Yusuf, honestly, such a high speed guy, man. I followed in your footsteps. Like I do so many things and I feel like you do so many things, but people don't realize that like I'm only this way because of your influence, man. Like people are like, yo, like how many things are you part of? I was like, probably a dozen, and I kind of sometimes forget. But I also think back and I'm like, well, I wouldn't have be this way if it wasn't for you. So, like you do it such a great job of handling it all and all the power to you. So, you work 6 days a week, a lot more than I do. And I mean, you're married and you have like athletics on the back of your mind and all these things. It's like, how do you manage it all? Like, can you like touch on that? Like, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, we could dive into that. It's not easy for sure. Very fortunate enough to have a very understanding wife because I really want to put in that time and effort at this young age where we're healthy, maybe minor back problems, right? But minor neck and back problems. But yeah, you kind of need a really good support system to be able to pull this off. So these three offices I forgot to mention are nowhere near each other. They're in different parts of the Bay Area. If you start doing the math, you're like, it's a giant triangle that you could easily draw on a map. Doesn't matter how small that map is. It's a huge triangle. And on top of that, I live outside of that triangle, an hour away from that. So I commute, yeah, I work 6 days a week. I commute 24 hours a week, depending on how bad traffic is. It's a lot for sure. And at the same time, if you take away your going to the gym, athletics, your free time, right? For me, it could be either be pickleball. That's kind of been a fun thing for the past year, or it could just be going to the gym, getting a nice exercise in, feeling good about myself, or just a nice walk with my wife around the city where we live. So many different options. And I just feel like that's a non-negotiable. When you make something a non-negotiable, I
Mm.
know you're really good at that too. Yeah, I appreciate all the praise, but sometimes I need to look back at you because I feel like I might have mentored you in a couple things, but you do it, you go above and beyond and you do it the right way. So I
Appreciate
sometimes
that.
look back at it and I'm like, dang, I gotta snap chat from I'll head at the gym. Our snap streak's almost at 1,000 days. So I'm like, all right, no excuses, gotta go to the gym. Worst case scenario, I have like a little setup on my house over here. Yeah, so you just have to there's some things that are non-negotiable. I guess some people could look at it like, hey, this guy drives so much, it kind of sucks. Yeah, you can look at it that way, glass half empty, but let's look at it glass half full. That means I can learn more. I can learn about real estate. I can talk to my friends. We can chat up with you and a lot of other great friends that, like I previously mentioned, and a lot more. Uh, Sometimes some people ask me for help. I can talk to them as well, talk to my family at that time, conduct business meetings. I try to be efficient with my time as much as possible. I think the big thing is like every minute kind of counts now, so I look at it
Mhm.
that way. I never want to be like too overwhelmed. And another thing that I actually learned from you is delegation is key. I've actually been trying to implement that a lot more. So delegation goes a long way. A really good book for anyone that's interested, Buy Back Your Time, by Dan Martell. I've actually listened to that a few months ago, from another good friend, Rapon. He recommended it. So highly recommend that. The only way, you just need to have a really nice support system. I feel like that's the way all this works. And at the end of the day, last message I want to send out to everyone: hard work always pays off. Like, I was listening, I went to my Dr. Chima's 26-year wedding anniversary, really nice party, and I met his aunt from, I guess, his mom's sister. He's like, yeah, we sponsored him out in 1994 to come to the US, and he was always the hardest working guy. And 1994 is a long time from now. If you ask me who's the hardest working person that I know, it's an easy answer. Like, he's either doing farming, dentistry, or something business related. But when it's not time for business, step away, have fun, be with your family. So that's the biggest takeaway from everyone. When it's time to work, you gotta work hard. Make every minute count. And when it's not, everything's on do not disturb. Let's prioritize family, friends, and all that, especially family. I feel like that just goes a long way. Another reason why I'm back in the San Francisco Bay Area. I love my family. I love being around them. Grateful for everyone in my family, from my in-laws, from both sides, like my brother-in-law from my sister's side to my in-laws from my wife's side. Because I really grew up with no family. And then obviously my mom and dad, grandma, brother, all here too. So it's nice.
Good. Perfect. And, like we were talking about all of this before, we started recording the podcast. And I was mentioning too, it's like, a lot of people use the term work-life balance, but I don't think that's necessarily true. And I learned that from another podcast I was listening to, with a talk actually with Dr. Appa, and he mentioned a work-life harmony, because I don't think a balanced lifestyle will allow you to succeed. Like, you can't work 4 to 6 days and give it all your best and be balanced. You have to find that harmonious point. There's going to be some days where you're just focused solely on A, and like then switching gears to project B and C and D. You have to be all in, obsessed, like to the point where you're like, this is all I think about when you go to bed. And when you put your pillow on your head on that pillow, you're like, man, this is all that matters. And then you shift that harmony towards your family and to your loved ones, and people that really support you. And I think we as a generation need to switch from that balance mindset, because to me that doesn't really make sense. But instead we should look for something called harmony, and figure out what works in that moment of time, stay present and go after it. That's something that I think I've recently reflected on, and I want to just pass it on to everyone, because I think you're a good role model in that sense. Because when you go in, and then you jump out when you need to jump out, like you mentioned, like Dr. Chima showed that to you. So I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. So, like you mentioned, I feel like the word harmony is like goes a long way, because when you're a business owner, especially with these 3 offices and everything else, no 2 days are the same. So when you say work-life balance, you kind of almost have to have like a strict schedule. I feel like that's possible with school, because like the weeks are almost the same, right? It's very it's what's the right word? But it's like every week is like almost very, very similar. And
Mm-hmm.
in the real world, it's not like that. It's like no 2 days are ever the same. So you want to have, like you mentioned, like the harmony with everything. And you might have to shift. One time it might be a focus on business A, or if you only have one business, just on business, then it'll shift to the family. Like, I think a harmonious relationship is like the best way to go about it, like you mentioned.
Okay, so Yusuf, so we finished talking about the whole business, the grind, NYU. So let's kind of shift some gears. So you were into fitness just like me, and I want to hear about your current routine and your journey ever since leaving NYU, and what you do to kind of stay fit now, because you do have that crazy 6-day work schedule.
Yeah, I might not be the best role model for this. I think you might have to talk about scheduling and being strong about your routine. I look up to you for that. For me, I try to make time. Like, for example, I like pickleball. I feel like it's almost like an injury-free type of game. Yeah, there are some injuries, but it's like really easy.
Mm-hmm.
You can play with like older people, younger people. It's like really fun. So usually Tuesdays, I like to go out of my way, do that in a city called San Ramon out there with a really good friend. He really got me into
Mm-hmm.
pickleball. So yeah, do some pickleball there. And then nowadays, I think I'm just like very strict with bare minimum, like 3, 4 days. Let's go to the gym. Let's get a nice cardio in. and I've kind of made it in a way where the gym is very close to the dental office, so there's no excuses, right? I could be like, you know what, I don't want to do it today, but it's like a 2 minute drive. Park the car. Worst case scenario, 30 minutes. Let's let's have a nice, consistent routine going and go from there. It was a lot easier at NYU because I lived in a really nice
Mhm.
apartment that had a gym on the was it the third floor or something like that, second floor, third floor, and it was a really nice gym actually, way better than like some of these like gyms that are offering memberships. So got lucky that they're very
Mhm.
consistent, 6 days a week, all the time. We have to make it work. That was my study break, right? I think it was second floor. I study. I leave my stuff there, go get a nice workout in 40 minutes, come back, get back to studying. Um, a little bit harder when you live in the suburbs life, but you have to make it work. I remember I got a quick story, got a back injury. I was out of it for like 3 months. Couldn't really do pickleball or going to the gym. And it actually made work as can't tell you how difficult it was. Couldn't even take out simple teeth at some point. I know the back injury played a role, but it just felt like I was so out of shape. I feel like I gained 10 years kind of back to my routine only the past few weeks. I feel energized. I'm working 6 days a week. Last year we had like Thanksgiving off and Christmas off, and it was tough.
Yeah. I think people fail to realize like how taxing dentistry is on the body. And it's just like if you don't take care of yourself, you're just gonna like burn out. You're gonna really hurt yourself. Because if you're not fit, how do you expect to take care of your patients? Like extractions is surgery, doing fillings is surgery, endo surgery, like all of this is surgery. And it's not, the large upscale surgery that you see general surgeons doing. No, it's microsurgery. You're looking through loops or scopes. You're working backwards in a mirror. It's more harder than it looks. And it's kind of funny how people kind of underestimate that part of our field. And, you know, I think working 6 days a week, it's good when you're young if you can. But if you can just stick at 4 and make it productive and make it worth it financially and physically, then you should do that, because I think burnout is very common in our field.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Like you mentioned, just quick add-on, burnout is real. I feel it so many times. If it was my choice, I'd be like you all had. I'd be working 3 to 4 days a week. I'd love to, but I look at it. Do I really want to do 4 or 5 days a week, up to like the 50s, or just do 6 days a week and make it easy later on in life? So I think the whole point is to have a vision,
absolutely.
right? Like we're very close to one another. We're like our mindset, our vision, things like that. But your vision varies from mine a little bit. So that's where the discrepancy in work is,
Mhm.
right? Like you still work hard, I work hard, but I have a different vision. So I want to go 6 days a week right now, and I'll tone it down later on. You kind of want to go the nice, slow and steady route. I'm kind of going like fast and then just slowing it down. So that makes sense. So many ways to do it, but you have to exercise.
Exactly.
And I think our D1 instructor, forgot his name. It's been that many years. Uh, when he was teaching us drilling, I remember we had like a little quick lecture, and he's like, you know what? I still go to the gym. I had like a heart surgery, and I'm still back to benching 2 plates.
Yeah.
And he's like, you have to do it. Like, there's no way to survive without like physically taking care of your body.
Yeah. No, absolutely, dude. Like fitness is huge. And like you said, like everyone's journey is different. Like, I think it's whatever works for you. And the other thing is you're also a three-time business owner. For you, working 4 days would make sense if you owned your own practice, like, and that was it. But because you're a partner in two other practices, you have to put those extra days, and it's just not possible. And so, that's just a whole different ballgame. And I think that's where our visions change a little bit. But I'm sure that when you get older, like you said, you'll tone it down as needed. And it's dependent on how you want to work. It's not always work, 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 but it's like, work smart and whatever that looks or means to you, that's what you do. And there's no wrong or right answer. You just figure it out. And as long as you stay fit, you keep yourself active, I think you could practice for a long time, but you just cannot neglect the health part. If you do that, you're pretty much toast.
Well said.
I mean, yeah, that's all there is. Okay, so Yusuf, so when it comes to fitness, right? So we've talked about what you do now. Where did it start? Were you like an athlete growing up? Did you do a lot of like sports? Talk about and touch about on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I'm actually not a video gamer at all. So if you play COD or whatever games exist nowadays, you don't want me on your team. You never want to be on your team. You don't want me on your team. I'm like the worst at video games. I was actually always outside playing games, basketball, something like that. I remember in high school, I played a lot of different sports, but I think the gym kind of came to be. Ironically, I don't even know how this is like possible, but teachers aren't the nicest people. I will never forget. I was in ninth grade, geometry honors. My geometry honors teacher was is a football coach, and he's like, remember, he's like making fun of me for no reason. Got a random stray out of nowhere. He's like, look at Yosef over here. I could throw 25 pounds at him and it'd probably get him. He can't lift 25 pounds to save his life. I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. Like, you probably know I'm kind of tall, right? I'll never forget my driver's
Yeah.
license at that time after my growth spurt was like 6'1", 135 pounds. And I gave myself an extra 10 pounds. I was a stick. Yeah, I got a little bit taller since then, but I remember even my dad was like, "Dude, you are way too skinny." So, had to go to the gym and work hard. And I honestly think my peak was at NYU. Having that gym for 3 years, right there on the third floor, was absolutely amazing. Yeah, yeah, like I was on and off, decent amount of gains in at Berkeley, decent amount, like little bit before during high school, but I feel like NYU played such a big role that now I really want to. I always strive to get back to that point, and there's like smart ways of doing it. Like we brought up Dr. Mark Costas, like he works out 6 or 7 days a week, but his workouts are like 20, 25 minutes. He's just efficient. Like you just scroll for Facebook or Instagram for 2 minutes in between sets. That's gonna prolong your workout for no reason. Just gotta be smart with your time, I feel like. And yeah, nowadays I don't play too much sports like basketball. Unfortunately, I have a broken ankle, broken pinky from essentially basketball. So I'm gonna tone it down with the contact sports. I'll stick to my pickleball.
Hey man, if that's what it like, some of us have to take those cautions. Like I don't ski or do anything crazy, but I will jump out of a plane, So it's just like we all have our vices, but it's different, right? Like we just have to pick our battles and see what works for us. But as long as fitness is like a biggest crux for us, that's the biggest thing. So like Yusuf, do you stretch or do yoga or do anything like that to kind of like, help your joints? Because dentistry is in a very tight spot in a tight space in a small enclosed area. Like do you do any of that to kind of keep yourself healthier?
Yeah, I gotta add on like being tall and then working with kids makes it like double as hard because kids you can't really practice ergonomics. They're squirming and moving around. You gotta get the work done. With kids, it's very difficult. I do a lot more like one day I will do yoga. My dad's been pushing me for like ages. I think that aspect is like what's missing in the my fitness routine. The only thing I really do now, like the past few years, is like I make sure to run at least half a mile. I feel like that's like a nice way to kind of get warmed up, stretch, get a little bit loose. And it's like not walking or jogging. Like I try to like run. I feel like I feel like I'm a lot better shape that way. Even like if I play pickleball, I'll just run a few like half a mile right before I do it just to get warmed up. I'll play better with pickleball. I feel like I'll be better at the gym. I don't want to just jump into lifting heavy weights or just jump into just doing dentistry 6 days a week. I feel like that keeps me loose. Yoga, hopefully one day.
One day, yeah. Hey, listen, I started it. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I'll do it because of the flexibility benefits. I mean, I stretch every day, 10 minutes a day. That was something I picked up from my friend Greg. I mean, you remember Greg, the military guy. But man, it's helped a lot. Like, I mean, I've recovered from injuries a lot quicker because of that stretching, that flexibility. Do I still get injured? Yeah, absolutely. That could happen at any age. But I think, adding that yoga, adding that stretching, it helps with the longevity and not only in fitness but just in dentistry as a whole. But yeah, dude, that's quite an interesting journey on like fitness. Like I think we've had very similar journeys. I mean, I used to run a lot more. I like now do power walks and do like LISS, but that's just, my shift in fitness. And, as long as we were talking, stay fit and you'll be pretty solid. So let's shift gears now. Let's go into growing up as an Afghan in California, Yusuf. Let's tackle that because, you and I kind of grew up during a weird time in American history. So go for it. Talk about, growing up as a Californian.
Yeah, yeah, no. Being Afghan is interesting because my dad had to leave as a teenager. My mom had to leave as a teenager, different varying timelines. Like my dad left in 1981, the communist regime. It was tough times out there. I remember my dad was so if anyone is familiar or not familiar, essentially, if you said the word God or any variation of it, prayed anything, you would be killed on the spot. So my dad was in a protest where people just went on the roof and just started shouting "Allahu Akbar," right? I was like, way to protest, but they came and like try to kill everyone that was involved in that protest. I remember it was like tough times. My dad's like, his dad unfortunately passed away like a year and a half prior. His brother got
Yeah.
drafted into the military, so he's like essentially the only man of the house. And he just told his mom, "You know what? I have to go to the grocery store," and he just left the country. Like he had to take nothing with him. Like it's one of those crazy stories, right? You hear it quite a bit. Went with nothing. He went to Iran, went to jail for no papers. Somehow got himself all the way to India because he just needed to get his come to the U.S. Right? His uncle lived in Houston. Yeah, I got to India, went to jail for no papers there, but he finally got a quick sponsorship. Moved to Houston and then New York, the Bay Area, back to New York, and I was born. Right? I'm a New Yorker. Uh, and then yeah, my mom was in a very timeline where everything got changed, kind of like how it is with Ukraine, right? Where the U.S. is not bringing their military into the country, but they gave all the arms, everything possible. And unfortunately, when you do that, what happens when the war ends? Yeah, my country won in 1989. Uh, the Russians left, communism is gone. But what happened is a lot of bad guys got all the guns, right? So what they did was it was a tough time in my country. So what happened is like people, the bad guys with all the guns and weapons and money would just walk into people's homes. They pretty much just made a giant band together, just stealing everything. I remember my mom was like during that time, like you'd essentially they just take people's girls and daughters. If you were like at a marrying age, you'd be gone. Luckily, my mom was a little bit younger, but still, like, they'd have to hide my mom. They just walk in, like, hey, stand outside. We'll just take whatever we want. And and to this day, I remember my mom's upset. It's like my grandfather fought in the front row of the Afghan British wars. We had double swords. He's known as a double sword guy, and we had it. And they just stole it. And who knows? They probably just threw it away because they didn't know the value, the sentimental value. So then you go through that realm, and then yeah, we come to the U.S. Mom and dad get married, all that. I'm born in New York. Years pass by. My dad thinks a city called Fremont, California is a great city to live in. And we're there 2001 and 9/11 happens. Obviously, this is still a ripple effect from the communism, the bad guys, like people just trying to fight for power, people from other countries coming in and doing bad stuff on behalf of our name, but no one's going to look at it that way, right? So it was tough, tough times. Remember 9/11 happened? You'd essentially it was tough. Like you have to buy an American flag right away, hang it on your house, and do everything possible to almost prove that you're not a bad guy. And I remember all my neighbors were like I actually grew up in an area predominantly Irish American. Like they had never even heard my name before. Back then, my dad was like, "Yeah, dude." When I told people I'm Afghan, I go, "Oh, that's so cool," right? Like a lot of countries are like that nowadays, right? "Oh, you're from the so and so, that's so cool." But when that, ever since 9/11 happened, you're like, "Oh, I'm from Afghanistan." Oh, mindset, Taliban, terrorism, this. And it was very tough. I was in a baseball team. They wouldn't even let me vote to who should be in the All-Star team. I got voted into the All-Star team by all because I asked people around. They're still my classmates at school, and I got in, but they didn't even let me go in. They're like stuff like that. It was years and years of that. My neighbors wouldn't even talk to us. The amount of times, like you do the smallest little thing, the police would show up. I'll never forget 2004. We had the FBI just come to our door. This is the day my brother was born, ironically. They just knocked on the door and they're like, you know what? They just wouldn't leave, right? And my dad was taking a nap because he was helping my mom in labor. He was really tired. And after an hour, I'm like, hey, dad, these guys just aren't leaving. They're like sitting in the car in the driveway and they're not budging. And they're two people in suits with like black portfolios. Uh, and I remember one guy spoke my language, which was like Dari Farsi, but he was American, right? And it was like, so my dad eventually let him in. And the first question you get is, so they asked me to leave, my sister to leave and go sit in the room. My grandmother was there, offered him juice, and then she's like, you have to leave too. We all got sent to our rooms, right? Like you walk into someone's home and you get sent out. It's hilarious. How old is it? 2004, I'm like 10 years old. I was like, what the hell is going on over here? And I remember that, yeah, my grandma said, yeah, one guy was recording and the other guy was just asking my dad questions like, hey, you went to Afghanistan. So we went back in 2003 just to see my uncle, make sure everything's okay. It's tough times, right? Like when that happens, you have the entire world against you when you're against the US. So yeah, he visited 2003. A year later, they're like, hey, you went to Afghanistan. What happened? What'd you do? Did you meet Osama bin Laden? Like, that was legit the question he got. Have you been to, uh, I keep messing up the exotic island and where he stayed. There was Bora Bora, there's Tora Bora, but the one that he was in, they're like, hey,
Yeah.
was he over there? Or did you visit it? My dad's like, no, of course not. It was like ridiculous questions. And I remember wiretapping was a very common thing. Like you could just tell someone's listening to all your audio recordings. It happened for over 10 years and you just can't say anything. Like you'd walk into the house and you just know, like my mom was really good about like organizing the house and she was very particular. There were so many times she's like, dude, I just know someone's gone through our stuff while we're gone. And you can't say you're doing anything about it, right? There's so many stories about it. It was tough. Even to this day, you get a little worried. You tell someone you're Afghan, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And like, we're always on the news for the bad reasons. Yeah. So let's tie it back to Berkeley. So I took a few classes on Islamophobia, and there's another one about like
Hmm.
Muslims in America by Hatem Bazian, who's a very pro-Palestinian speaker. He's gone to jail so many times for it. He's at UC Berkeley, and he's also one of the co-founders of Zaytuna College with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. So yeah, I took a couple classes, and I remember I used to go to office hours, tell them about these stories. Yeah, you're never supposed to let anyone come to your house. They could actually like, if you even had like something against you, you'd almost have to become an informant to work. Otherwise they'd like go tell your like deepest, darkest secrets or something like that. It was a very common tactic used. So it was very scary times. I remember my dad was like so paranoid. He's like, I don't think we can even go to the masjid. I remember we didn't go for 10 years, which is crazy to me because I go like pretty frequently, right? I got fortunate. My office is close to the masjid, especially one office, Pleasanton. I'm like down the road from one of the largest ones in the Bay Area, the second largest one actually. So, you couldn't even step foot for 10 years. You're just scared. Like, what's going to happen if you actually go? They're going to think something's going on, or I know there's still informants and all that, but it was like tough, tough times. And even to this day, I was mentioning to you before, they have like these pine trees that are fake, and you can just tell they're like fake pine trees for like listening to people's information. And at the end of the day, I have nothing to hide. If you guys want to listen to anything, be my guest. I hope to listen to this podcast. Think I'm a good guy. But it's just hilarious, like the extent that they had to go through. Yeah, I could see the point for national security, but same time, it went way overboard for people that I've never stepped foot in my country. I've done nothing wrong. I feel like I've only been to the masjid a few times. That's it, and it's very unfortunate, but yeah, interesting. I'm pretty sure it's like my eye opening for a lot of people. Like how even like I became a part of like these investigations for no reason. My family, myself.
That's wow. Like growing up, we kind of went through something similar, but I think I was very oblivious to it. But I know my dad and mom were like, there's definitely like people listening to us. And like back then, there was no things like WhatsApp and like cell phones, dude. Like Motorola Razr was like the thing. But like, we used landlines. Landlines were super easy to like, hack into. You have the little box in the back of the house. Dude, anyone could come in and at any time pretend to be a worker and like tap your phones. It wasn't hard. And I'm sure like, and I think it was like later on revealed that they were doing that, which is kind of crazy, but it was a weird time. And I mean, I don't know if you went through it. I mean, I've mentioned a couple times I was bullied heavily until like late into high school. I'm sure I don't know if you dealt with that as much, because I feel like maybe we're in a more diverse community, but man, it was a wild ride, that people don't talk about I wouldn't I mean, yeah, I guess you could call it trauma because you're like a little kid and you don't know what's going on. You're trying to figure out like why are people doing this?
Yeah,
But yeah, no one really mentions that like what it's about or like how it affects you when you grow up. So it's interesting.
yeah, yeah. No, I remember your topics about bullying. Yeah, that was honestly, that was like the least of my worries. And trust me, my nickname by so many other people. Sometimes a joke, like a friendly joke, but you're just like sick and tired of it. Trust me, my name was Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden for so many years. I was like, bro, what the like? Just there's so many terrorist jokes for so many years, even though they ironically were done by Asian Americans and Indian Americans. You're
Yeah.
like, it's the most hilarious thing ever. But it's like it was a very common thing. At some point, you just have to say, haha, great one, bro, and then just walk away. Like, what else
And
do you say?
and that's all it is.
It's
You
unfortunate.
can't. I mean, it just becomes a part of your identity, and it sucks. But you're just like, okay, whatever. It's interesting. Did you like face any other issues like with the whole growing up as an Afghan? Like, was how was the community in California? I've heard it's pretty strong now, but was it like that when you were growing up, or how was it like?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty sure most people have heard of the book The Kite Runner, based in Fremont,
Hmm.
California. Ironically, a quick
Really?
side story. We hired an actor for our Los Gatos office once, and she was actually the niece of the Kite Runner book. Pretty small world, right? Actually helping us
Wow.
with a few video shoots once. So for the Los Gatos office, yeah, it was a very nice Afghan community in Fremont, California. At some point, there's the largest community outside of Afghanistan, like the most Afghans in one area outside of Afghanistan. I remember that was like a very big talk. People still tell me that. I'm like, hey guys, wait. So like diversity has changed. The tech industry has changed. My people really aren't in tech. So Fremont, California is full tech right now. It's a different town completely. I remember I grew up in like Flushing, New York. That used to be a very large Afghan community. Moved to Fremont. Ironically, I grew up in an area of Fremont that was like not really too many Afghans. Like people were like, "Oh, you're Afghan? How'd you say your name?" Like people were never heard my name before, right? But I was in a yearbook. I'll never forget. I was looking at the yearbooks from like the 90s in the early 2000s from like the middle school and the high school I went to. You'd have to flip through pages to find non-Afghans. Like if the school had like 2,000 kids, there's like 20 non-Afghans. That's how like dominated it was in the city of Fremont. It was actually ironically not like that. My dad hated that city in the 1980s, late 80s. He's like, yeah, that city was so racist. I hated going there. Ironic, right? It's like become very Afghan, and then now it's very Indian American out there. So yeah, it was a really great, nice city to grow up in. It was nice to have great Afghan food at home and go to restaurants. My dad's hilarious. He always loves going to Afghan restaurants. I'm like, Dad, my mom cooks good food. He's like, yeah, it's okay. I like our food a lot more than anything. So we've had the best Afghan food at my house and all these like multiple restaurants still going strong. And yeah, we're a lot of like refugees that over the years since the Taliban have taken over are coming to like the California area right now. Since I'm like all over the place, I kind of run into them everywhere from like Sacramento to many different parts of the Bay Area. So it's a growing population out here for sure. It's very diverse now. I feel like the San Francisco Bay Area compared to when I first originally moved in like the early 2000s.
Sounds good, Yusuf. No, I really appreciate your insight about this. So we're kind of getting towards the end of the podcast, and you've spoken a lot about your parents. The parental influence is so important. It's huge. Like I know I could name a bunch of pieces of advice from them, and I'm sure you can too. But I like to end most of my podcasts with one thing. If there's two pieces of advice, or one, whatever it might be, two I've seen as the trend because one from your mom, one from your dad. What would it be and why? If there's one thing that really stuck with you as you've come from childhood to grown up life, what would it be and what was the impact on the things that your parents talked to you or taught you?
Yeah. Uh, my parents have been such a huge influence for myself, and I feel like a lot of the success of my life, I thank them for. Obviously, I thank God and the fact that my parents sacrificed so much to put myself in this situation. As you could tell from those crazy stories my dad's been through, my mom had to sacrifice everything at a very young age, and fortunately from the life circumstances. And they usually try to give me advice, like the deep advice together. So it's almost like a two for one. Like,
Mm,
for example, I guess I never speak English with my parents. They were very adamant on
yeah,
for us to never lose our culture, our
yeah.
language, and everything. But the big thing was, excuse me, because I'm trying to translate this from like Farsi to English. But essentially,
You can say it in Farsi, by the way. You can say it in Farsi and then translate
the podcast people be like, "Dude, this guy's Farsi is terrible." But
it.
essentially, it's like when even if no one's looking, you always want to try to do the right thing all the time. And I feel like that has a lot of cultural ties, a lot of religious ties, because because I'm a very practicing Muslim, and it's really big big on us to know that, you know what, even if no one's looking, we always want to do the right thing. Like we can do that with dentistry. Like we can go into dentistry, right? Like a filling will always be a filling. A root canal will always be a root canal. Trust me, I've seen
Hmm.
firsthand that people have made fillings into root canals, and it's like the most. It's like it's just very heartbreaking to see. It's the same thing behind the scenes with finances, with family, and all that. And we really try our best not to do it for anyone's thank you. We just do it for the greater good of like humanity. I feel like that's a big, especially with the rhetoric nowadays with politics and just internationally. A lot of people just going back and forth at each other. I think we just forgot that we just want to be great people at the end of the day. Want to do the right thing all the time, even if no one's looking. And I feel like that just goes a long way. And that's really missing. Sometimes we do the right thing because only people are watching us, but it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, and I think that's part of the beautiful thing about our faith is that do things as if you're being watched from all angles, and that's I think you see that in the quality of the work that you put and all that. It's a great advice for your parents to keep in mind. And so, with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for your time today, Yusuf. A lot of pearls, wisdom. Your story was very unique. And I just want to say thank you, man. And thank you for being my brother and my friend. I wouldn't be where I am today without you. And so that's it, man. I appreciate it. I want to thank, my listeners for listening and taking the time to listen to the podcast. So, with that in mind, any last words, Yusuf?
Yeah. I really appreciate all the praise. You're doing such a great thing. Amazing platform. I love how like our one-on-one conversation, you're taking this out and like just giving it out to the world. So I appreciate all the praise, but I really love what you're doing for everyone out there. Like just quickly, how we went from and we were back to back MBA presidents, and then you were just helping just grow like the vision I had. You're doing the same thing with your gym routines and just helping other people realize that there isn't like one right way to do dentistry. There's no one right way to live your life, and that really means a lot. I'm always here for you and anyone else that needs my help. And thank you guys all for listening.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Mind, Body, and Roots. Until next time, my friends, be well and take care of yourself.